I know we have some new people. Can you raise your hand so we can get an idea who you are? I saw new faces. That's great. So just in case you're not familiar with the calling in the light, I'll say a prayer. And at the end, I will start to chant Anai Hu, and you can join right in with that. Anai is a word that conveys empathy or bringing into alignment with, and Hu is an ancient word for God. So we'll do that for a little bit, and then John will take over. Mother, Father, God, just now we ask to be filled with the light of the Christ and the Holy Spirit. We ask for the presence of the mystical traveler and the preceptor consciousnesses. And as we're filled with that light, we ask that anything that's out of balance or any disease be lifted and taken back into the nothingness where we don't need it anymore. We ask to be surrounded by the light, protected by the light. We ask to be open to the blessings that are here to come forward this evening. We ask to come to you in perfect service, as you know exactly what that is, and to open to the Christ within. Grateful for this opportunity to do that. Berush Vishan. Anna. So John has come from London, correct, to Kalamazoo. So we want to do a couple things. One thing I want to mention is that we want to, when we're done with this, when John's done speaking, be sure we give him lots of space and not touch him. That's just something we ask out of courtesy. And other than that, we want to give him a really warm Kalamazoo and Chicago and Midwest welcome.
Thank you. Is that same bat station, same bat channel, or something like that? So there's some kind of ritual that's been going on the last few years, and it's we go somewhere, where's east from here? Where would that be? Is that it? Oh, I'm getting somewhere this way. But anyway, east. So then we've been doing something we call the Founders Dinner, which is about the founder of a number of organizations and movements, John Roger. So they were mentioned tonight. Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness and Peace Theological Seminary, Insight Seminars, which is now Insight University. How many have been involved in that? Oh, and we're online, right? So that means that we have people, maybe they're over in London, visiting with us tonight. So we're on, I don't know what it is in relation to Greenwich, but I think it's something like 5 hours. Yeah, 5 hours, okay. I call it behind, but it could be ahead. We're over here, just depending on your point of view. But we've been doing celebrations around John Rogers' birthday each year. So this year we were over in London, and then we went to a place in southwest England, in the Dartmoor part of England, which is also Devon. If maybe you've heard of these things, or at least the cream, and that's right, yeah. So we were there, and then the last part of it was up in Scotland with John Roger and some of us stragglers, hanging in there the last few days. So actually, yesterday I flew from Edinburgh to London to Chicago to here. So here we are. And then for those of you following my journal, like, what's that guy's name? Something Steve, the travel journal, and Casey, Rick Steve, thank you, there you go. So I have my own John Kenneth or something. I also visited my daughter in Berlin because she's taking a semester there she goes to Oberlin, over in, let's see, that would be, more east, so somewhere over there near Cleveland. But for this semester, she's in Berlin at Humboldt University. I'd never heard of it because there's a Humboldt State University in California, and I knew about that one, but there's one in Berlin. So that's where she is, and spent some time with her, and then visiting Berlin. The last time I was there was this thing called the Wall that was still up, and some of you know about the worm that got in the wall. There's a great moment of peace, if you haven't seen it, that kind of tells that story, but I'll tell a little version of it, that there was I'm guessing about 90 of us were in Berlin on our way to the former Soviet Union, so you kind of get the flavor of the times. But at that time it was a very active Soviet Union, including East Germany, and Berlin was where the line was. And we visited, and John Roger talked to me, and he said, it was like I was meditating, and I saw this light worm in the wall, and it was gradually eating away at the wall, and the wall was going to come down within 2 years. And it'd be good for our group to help with that. And so we could talk to the people about going down to the wall and meditating. I'm just going to check. Was anybody there on that occasion? Yep, there's a couple people. Did you go to the wall and do a little light worming? You did? Okay. And then, it was kind of amazing, because I actually heard somebody recently say that the political scientists, those people who study politics and regimes and that kind of thing, to their knowledge, there wasn't one single political scientist that was predicting that the Berlin Wall would come down anytime soon. So John Roger was kind of a lone voice in some kind of wilderness talking about that. And so it did. So if you know your history, it did come down. And I did see a portion of the wall, and I stayed in what would have been East Germany on the other side of the wall, but now it's this amazing, modern, thriving kind of city center, with very beautifully architected buildings and, the latest retail outlets selling fancy things and that kind of thing. So it was amazing to walk around some 24 years later and see what I could remember. And then I went to the Museum of Terror, which is different than I think the Tower of Terror at Disney World. But, so this one actually tells a story photographically and with some information about what happened with Adolf Hitler and the Nazis and Germany, and kind of paralleling what was going on kind of socially, some of the things in the world, and that with photographs. And so that was quite a powerful little moment. And the location was right where the SS headquarters were. They actually put the museum in a whole city block and in that area. So that was kind of interesting to kind of go back some, I guess it's about 80 years now, when those things were all developing. And then come there with the idea of it's a beautiful place, and that we see relative health and happiness going on. So that's something to think about, in terms of what we're doing here tonight. So we're doing an introduction, and the way I look at this is it's really part of the workshop that we're doing this weekend. How many of you are already enrolled? And okay, so most of you. So that starts tomorrow morning at 10. So I like to tell people online, because they might go, I could still get there. So yes, indeed, if you'd like to, I think there's some space. I'm looking around yet. There's some space in the room for you. And if any of you want to come on by tomorrow morning and extend your participation, you're welcome. For those of you who are new, I'm going to, how would I say this? Let's see. Well, it's like something's in motion, and I'm going to get on with it in motion. So I'm not going to attempt to start where did the Christ begin kind of thing, because it really is in motion, and we're in it, and this movement is in motion with the Christ movement. And what is that? And it has some things that we could study historically or anthropologically, something like that, going back and studying cultures and histories and beliefs, and some people call that myths. If somebody else's beliefs don't match yours, they're often referred to as myths, which is kind of an interesting perspective. Like, how come mine's a myth and yours is real? But we're not even doing that tonight. We're just going to go ahead and get into what is the Christ as a way of joining in. I'm going to involve some things that we've heard from John Roger, and if you haven't seen John Roger before, at least you'll hear from him from some things we recorded previously. They show us and give us some idea of, well, what are we doing? And now I'm going to see where we are. See, we have a nice cover page on my plan, and we're already at page 3, 5, because we all called in the light. Yes, we did. And then, we have a moment of peace. So, you ready, Roger, for that first one? So basically, if you want to turn where I'm pointing on, I think the camera, you could play it. That's an interesting way of doing it. I didn't get that. But they're going to get it as a feed, those of you online, right? Or do you want to have them? Okay, very good. So we're taking you to our screen.
There's just an awful lot of mystery that we don't know. There's a great mystery on the planet, and it is who will be the next person to understand that they are also Christ. Who's going to be the next one to know they were born the Lord? Who is going to be the next one in this room? In Australia, on the East Coast, north to south, whoever they're watching this, who in your group is going to be the next one? I can tell you how you find out. If you look at that through the eyes of the Master, if you look at that through the eyes of the Master, or you could say, how would Jesus see this person? You will start to see the transformation of the Christ in front of you. You will be absolutely amazed. And not only that, and here's where it gets really strange. No matter what you were to do physically, it would be perfect no matter how bad it looked. Because that perfection would go off on to thousands of years into the future. I would tell you people, get busy and start looking spiritually at people. Start looking with the eyes of loving, the eyes of caring, the eyes of holding people, the eyes of honoring and respecting people. Have that as your format for existence. If you do, other things that you do in your livelihood will all be forgiven. They'll be taken care of by the karmic board. No one of us is going to be exempt as long as we're still growing toenails. You can do what you want to do, as long as what you want to do includes the caring of somebody next to you. Berush Bishan.
So how's your caring with somebody next to you? Huh? So just consider that perhaps that's an assignment, that when you came into this world, you were assigned caring to somebody next to you. And that's scriptural. Those of you who follow that or are at least familiar with it. I don't know where to tell you to go, chapter or verse, but it's there. You know, love the one next to you. You know that, and it can be your neighbor. And some of you know that one of the language that was spoken when Jesus was on the planet was Aramaic. Thank you. I was like, oh, again, what happened to that word? Where did it go? But it's still around. And in the Aramaic, the word neighbor is basically who you meet. So, you know, then that opens it up even further. There are some traditions that have some understanding of this. So in the culture, if somebody who's considered a stranger comes to you, you are to greet them as the Lord. And that's an assignment. So basically there's a place prepared and a view that whoever comes and how they come as the Lord. So it's another way to look at it. Like, how would you see what J.R. was referring to through the eyes of the Master? And that's what we're looking at. You know, that's our assignment this evening, is to move more fully into that consciousness that is in us, within us, looking through our eyes. And do we allow that to be engaged, or do we allow something that would be another kind of a master? And maybe you've met up with a master of fear, or a master of doubt, or a master of judgment, or a negative master, also called the negative power. And it's like, oh, so there are other opportunities that we all have to be attuned. And then in each moment, it's a movement. You know, it's in motion. So in each moment, we get another opportunity to determine, what is it now? What is it we're allowing to be engaged in this moment? So there you go. We're going to be doing that, and I have an assignment for about 10 minutes to talk about our divine nature and oneness with God. It's true. It's at 7:35, and let's see, what time does it say here? I think I might be ahead of schedule, but it's good. I'm kind of flying without a net today. You know, a facilitator without a watch is like no net. We're on the high wire. Does anybody? What time does your watch say? 7:22. See, we're flying because we're already up at what was scheduled for 7:35. So there you go. Oh, there's another side of the page. Let me just see what's there. Okay. Out of all that, I came into basically a couple of words that would sum up the 10 minutes, and it would be, what is your intention and what is your purpose in coming here tonight? So how many of you came from within 10 miles of here? Just guessing, go ahead. What you think you came from, wherever you came. And how many from at least 50 miles? How about at least 100 miles? Anybody come in from 1,000 miles? Or okay, there we go. And then I don't know how to measure, where I came from, but a few thousand. Yeah, just passing through or something like that. Okay. So just go ahead and consider your intention, and even though it has a title, the introduction to the Christ Within, what would your intention be in relation to that? Now, maybe it's just to be informed in some way, that you'd like to be informed, and sometimes people kind of look at it like, well, I'm interested in being entertained, or something on that order. Please entertain me, make it interesting, particularly that I came all this way, whatever that is, and then you paid the toll. There's a toll to come in. So let's just consider that you've made an offering. Anybody been to Temple Mount in Jerusalem? Quite a few. I'd say about 15. There's an inventory man in here, so that's how I used to make my living, counting. And then counting according to the rate of exchange, like so many at. So that putting a value on each item, and then you're counting, and then somebody's listening to what's being counted, and then it all gets added up. And that's also part of how it works, is that there's an accountability that we all have for the way we live and conduct our life in this world. So it has what's been referred to as a karma and law of cause and effect. And so what we put up in our life becomes accounted for. And so then if we're following what Jesus had to offer to us, then there was a point about, do you make that about the world to come, or those treasures that would be stored up in a place that's not in this world? So you don't transact it in this world. You transact it in the world to come. And that's a way of looking at our intention and our purpose toward you. So let's say we called an event here tonight, and let me dare to say that the Christ called an event here tonight. So that would be one introduction to the Christ Within, is there is a calling, that you were called. And perhaps you said, well, I already knew that. I was called long ago, and my life long ago was dedicated and has been devoted to the Christ and to the Christ Within, because that's where the worship takes place. That's part of the teaching and the reference point that we have, that the kingdom is within, but is also referred to as at hand. So if it's at hand, and it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, where can my hand go? Or where is it? So part of it, it's in touch, it's in reach, that we can get a hold of it. And the other part of it is we already have a hold of it. So what are we doing with what's in our hand? Then it's at hand, and then that becomes something that do we follow. I was in a place called St. Andrews in Scotland. I'm sure anybody who associates yourself with golf would know something about that, because it's a place that's referred to as the home of golf, and the birthplace, that kind of things. And there is a St. Andrew's golf course, and I was there. In fact, I want to go ahead and say this because they may be still trying to find out who was the guy in the car driving around St. Andrew's course while the professionals were playing rounds in preparation for the Dunhill Championship going on yesterday and today and over the weekend. That was me. I don't know if there was an all-points bulletin issued, but it was kind of funny because if you know the story about this golf course, that there's a hole, there's 18 holes, and one of them is the 17th hole, and there's a hotel there, a rather famous hotel if you know the golf course, and it's called the Road Home and there's a road that literally goes along the green. So you have an asphalt road right next to the green. I don't think they designed it that way, but back when they were creating the golf course, they weren't probably thinking of one day there would be these petrol fuel vehicles driving around. Well, I had this bright idea after we had lunch at the hotel that we should try to find that road, because I saw cars going on the road because we were right over the 17th green. Well, the next thing I know, we're on the golf course driving because it's like we're trying to go down that looked like a road. Well, okay, it didn't have asphalt, it just had dirt, and then we kept going, and then at some point we realized, well, we're on the golf course, and I thought, I think maybe if we keep going, we'll get off the golf course, but we just went into one end of the golf course by the ocean, and it was like the choice was drive in the ocean or keep going. So we came around, and I must say that it was really interesting that the golfers didn't seem to care. They went on about their business, but the caddies, we got some very interesting look from the caddies. Like, who's in the car and what are they doing here while we're playing golf? So we were enjoying the golf course. But the other reason I'm telling you this is because St. Andrew is one of the disciples. In fact, he was the first called, if you know the story. So then if you know the story, then as Jesus is coming out from the baptism in the River Jordan from John the Baptist, and the scene with the dove and the voice, and this is my son in whom I'm well pleased, and he's going off, he says to whoever that is, come follow me. Well, that's Andrew. So I went to the place, and I was talking to somebody from the local community at lunch, and he was talking about that's one of the oldest churches in England, is in St. Andrews, and also that they considered that the remnants, including some of the bones of St. Andrew, came to that place. So then you'd say, the first call, that I was just in the place in preparation for being here tonight. That's a nice story, isn't it? But it is something to consider that's important. What would you have done if Christ said, come follow me? Every one of us. I mean, if that was what showed up tonight as your introduction, like, I'm the Christ, come follow me, and Christ walks out the door, would you walk out? Or would you say, well, I have to be somewhere, could I get back to you? I have a few personal matters I need to take care of. So if you put flesh and blood and say, well, back then, they had a simple life, it'd be kind of easy to give up fishing and go follow somebody who just had a rather interesting dunking in the Jordan River. But it's something to think about, that, what will we do? What do we do when we're called as an introduction of the Christ, when we're called to love your neighbor as yourself, and when we're called to turn the other cheek when they just smacked your cheek, or to give them the shirt off your back, or whatever it is we have. When we're called to do these things through the Christ, and how do we respond? So that's something to just kind of consider in what brought you here tonight, your purpose for being here. I I consider that we're in the presence, not because of some outer thing, but yes, because we do gather, so there are two or more of us gathered in the name. And those of you who are new, maybe you might wonder, well, what do we mean by that? We mean more than just JESUS, which I don't even know if Jesus would answer to that, because in the Aramaic and in the Hebrew or in whatever, maybe he had a name in his part of Nazareth that was different, so that he wouldn't answer to the way we would call to him. So that name becomes, well, what is that? And I just see it as something that walks in what that is. The purpose of it is to walk in our purpose of what we came into this world to do, and that this movement is about that purpose. And something we call the purpose of the soul. And I know I'm talking to a lot of people in the choir here. I've heard your voices. And so you're generally up close to the pulpit when the preacher is doing the preacher's thing. And maybe in some way you've heard it before many times, and it's like, oh, here goes that sermon again. And I could do it far better than he could, but I'm still in the choir, so. But it's still something we're responding to, that we're all working on our moment. And there is a moment of truth that's appearing. And I look at it as that moment when we move from our life in this world to our life in the world to come. And that we all have that ticket, that it's being punched at some point, so that it becomes a reality that what we've been in this world is no longer occurring. And in some way what our life has been in this world translates into the world to come. And that's been talked about, and we do take that inevitability into what we're doing here. That it's a soul's purpose, it's a soul's intention, that we're in the business of translating ourselves spiritually through the Christ as that one who is anointed in the authority to bring forward what is the direct light, the direct love that comes from God, as it would be made manifest into the flesh. And that becomes something that, rather than make somebody elect and separate, actually brings us into our union and our communion, so that we come together, much like what was done, and let's call it the original communion service, referred to in the Last Supper that evening, which involved this bread that represents my body, and this is wine that represents my blood and what is to be sacrificed. So that becomes part of what's being done, but also that it translates into, we're no longer like master and servant, that the relationship has been conducted into a friendship, into a fellowship, so that we're one with each other. And now I call you my friends, and what I have come to deliver has been delivered. And my point of view is that wasn't just done for 12, and at some point it became 11, if you remember that part of the story. It was done for all who have the ears to hear and the eyes to see. So if you can hear that call, and let's consider that you heard it because you showed up, even if you were flipping channels on the internet, which I don't even know how to do that, so I'm trying to think, how would you do that on the internet? But people do find us in surprising ways. So maybe there is somebody right now, and then of course we're taking advantage of technology that allows us to archive, to store, to make available at another time. So we do that as well. So maybe it's at another time. Who knows with time and space how that will transpire. Okay, so that was my introduction to, let's see, what was that? Yes, there it is. It's on page 7. Our Divine Nature, Oneness with God, 10 minutes. And what time is it now? 7:37. Okay. I did that in 2 minutes according to the schedule. But what I'd like you to do is consider it, and if any of you would like to share, and sometimes that's part of the fellowship and part of announcing. So there's an annunciation, and there was an annunciation of the Christ, which is celebrated. So you can celebrate it usually. Does anybody know the dates? I think it's sometime like 4 weeks ahead of Christmas Day. Yeah, I'm getting a nodding head there. So it's formalized that there is an announcing, but it's referring to like the Marys, and the Marys had angelic appearances come to them, basically telling them, and then when the children were in their womb or something like that, because sometimes that's like, well, they're not a child until they take the first breath, but see, I'm not even going into that tonight. But they were kind of wiggling or something, indicating in the womb, I know you, you know me, we're talking, we're wiggling, we're vibrating. And the two Marys kind of had some understanding that something was going on that started in a kind of a miraculous event, unless it's ordinary in your life to have some angelic form appear to you and tell you that they're going to be a child with a divine purpose that you're going to bear into the world. And in that is part of it as well, that is there a receptivity towards what comes from the divine as our assignment, as what we're called forward to do, that we would let go and release ourselves from something of a personal nature. And if we go forward, then we know that there was a point in the Jesus story in the Garden of Gethsemane, after communion, after some wine, so maybe, and it was probably late, it's, the part of the story is it was done on Passover or the Seder, so in some way it relates directly to that, and then a new service came in, that allowed them to step it up, like as in a new commandment, of sorts. Of course, now that's something, you could take a lot of time, and people have. I mean, years and like a whole lifetime sorting through, trying to figure out the facts and figures and that kind of study. But I just look at it as something you can translate immediately. Are you willing to love in the way that God loves you? Are you willing to do that? And are you willing to hold your life up in the standard of what that is to walk in that truth of God's love towards all of its creation? So you can think about that, and then if anybody wants to share something about your intention, would like to bring you a microphone so you could stand up and, as you like, share your name.
My name is Susan, and my intention was to be with you. I was at Prana a couple of months ago when I had the most incredible experience of the traveler through you, through the sharing that you did. And then I did the Founders Dinner online, and again, you touched something inside me in a way before that it hadn't been touched up until that time. And I realized that what I've done a lot, and I'm doing it now, is I have gone outside for the answers instead of accessing the traveler within, or the inner master, or the Christ. And I realized, at least what I heard in those experiences with you, even though they weren't a direct sharing, is that you're sending us inside to have our own experience of the Christ. And I just wanted to say that I think I'm getting it. And I wanted to thank you for holding all that time.
Mhm.
And if you'd like to say anything, I'm open to hearing anything.
Well, I'd say welcome and thank you. That there is a responsibility in some way. It's like if someone says hello, if we don't say hello back, is that an insult, or are we ignoring? And whatever that might be, like it might be, well, I didn't hear you, but just to have that response of acknowledgement. So the Christ in me acknowledges the Christ in you. And that's something that starts to go on, that it's not something like the Christ in me is a little bit superior to the Christ in you, but keep working on it. And, that approach. But it's much more, it's a universal consciousness, it's a divine nature that we're all opening up to and being reborn in. That there's a birthing, so there's an announcing prior to the birth and a preparation, so that this comes about as a process that we're all involved in, no matter how long it takes. So it doesn't then become, well, why didn't you, become more Christ-like sooner so that I could recognize the Christ in you earlier and we wouldn't have to be lagging and I'm waiting for you and how long, That idea, that it's like, go ahead, move it in your way so that we start seeing, the divine. And then what does that translate to? It translates beautifully that we even would have love for the so-called enemy, the one that would be the most difficult, the most dark, the most anti. And, that's quite a stretch to kind of consider, do we have the strength? Do we have whatever that takes to extend that kind of love? But then now I'm hearing the words that when you've done it unto the least of them. So what is that? It'd be like the lowest, the darkest, the worst, the most evil. When you've done it unto them, you've done it unto me. That's something very powerful. To consider that, well, how do I love God? And do we really have a devotion and a love of God? And well, it would be answered in how we respond to the least one. And whatever is in between. God bless you.
Thank you.
Yes, so I don't know your name, but you're right on the aisle, and I'm going to have someone bring you a microphone. There you go. Here comes the microphone.
Well, this is my first time here, and I'm real excited about this. I'm Sam. This clear light is just so important, and I feel so much that it's my aspiration to really, this got tuned up like that, but it's really my aspiration to study spirit and to study this light. And what's really coming up for me as a revelation is it's not so much about Sam and him wanting to study and having this aspiration, which is all great, but as soon as the spirit becomes active, and as soon as it becomes to where it's studying for the sake of its studying and evolving and all these things, that's when it really comes alive. And I've never felt happier to just sit aside and allow this clear light or this feeling the air or this whatever to happen, and to allow myself to somehow, by getting out of the way, to become supremely active in it and to do, I don't even think about my doing great things in the world, but great things are coming with this light. I mean, I've been blind all my life and I feel like I can see here. It's just incredible. So thank you very much for being here and doing the work, and we'll see where it goes. I'm new here, and this is my first time. So we'll see where it goes.
Welcome,
Thank
Sam.
you very much.
God bless you.
Give yourselves a hand.
Anybody else want to share something about your intention and purpose? We'll go right over here.
This is my fourth time being here, being exposed to all this. And the first time I was able to witness John Roger, never met him personally, but I saw him visually and through the special programs, I knew he was speaking through Christ. And everything that he said gave you that sense of presence, that there was something that we can all strive for. And then the same thing has happened here with John Morton. You feel that they have a sense of the Christ within, and everything they're doing is beyond themselves. And sometimes when we collectively get together, we realize the beauty of what we are really trying to seek. And when you have the Christ within, like he said, having someone the next to you, no matter what it is, you have that feeling and you are re-energized mentally to continue doing this work. We get a little stale. We're here in the Midwest and you're all the way in California. So this is very, very special. And just watching John Roger tonight, he truly is speaking through Christ. And there is nothing that I have ever witnessed before. And if any of you have ever seen anyone speaking this way, you will know it.
Thank you. God bless you. So we'll step up here, and now we're at the Christ Within. That happens at 7:45. What time do you have? So yes, so we've moved in the Christ Within, but you just go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann, and what I know for sure is that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I didn't necessarily know until a few days ago that I would be here, but here I am. And I come by way of California to 50 miles southwest of the Chicago area to here, because my friend Noreen was at my mother's funeral or memorial service and said, if you're still going to be in town, they're doing the Christ Within in Kalamazoo. And I went, aha. So here I am. And when John Rogers said, who's going to be the next one of you to, well, then whatever he said, like, to know that you're the Christ. And it's like, aha, it's Mom. Mom knew that. She knew that on September 22nd. If she didn't know it before, she knew it on September 22nd at about 1:30, that was California time, 3:30 Chicago time. And it's like, yay for you, Mom, and I love you, and thanks for bringing me here now. So.
Okay. God bless you. There was somebody over here. We'll come up front.
I've been around a little while, and this is not my first retreat. But as I get older, I just have found that all things are new again, and that I reread the discourses over, and I go like, this is like my 8th time through this, and it's brand new. So my intention in coming here is to see what's new for me.
Okay. God bless you. Let's see. There's a question on here. How do we do that? And the answer is by entering into loving and forgiveness. So how many of you already have entered into loving and forgiveness? All right. And did you keep going, or did you run like what am I doing in loving and forgiveness? I don't want to be in that. I have too many other things to accomplish on my bucket list. So the words tell us this is the essence of the Christ. There's a wonderful seminar from John Roger, Christ is Forgiveness. It was done in, of all places, where I was born this lifetime. Anybody know that one? Las Vegas, that's right. So John Roger did do I think more than one seminar for sure. That was one of them, Christ is Forgiveness. And it was somewhere like the Riviera Hotel or whatever, one of those places where you go, really? That's right. We attune our consciousness to the Christ consciousness and evoke the Christ within, bring it forward into our awareness and our lives. As we do this, we learn to see life through the eyes of the Master. So there it is. So we just bring our awareness toward loving and forgiveness as a way of life. Suppose there's any hitches in doing loving and forgiveness? I'm sure. And this is the opportunity then to extend. Did you get to that place of the scripture where it was 70 times 70, like how many times are we forgiven? And let's see, that's 4,900? I think it is. 4,900 times. But to the degree also that we're forgiving, we too shall be forgiven. And I see it equally that to the degree we're loving, then we too are loved. So then it becomes, are we willing to love completely? Are we willing to forgive completely? And this is the Christ. This is who the Christ is. And it holds it as a consciousness. So if we're not in that, then we have an opportunity to move. And this is a movement. So that's the first word of how we describe what are we doing in this consciousness that has come forward to help us realize our spiritual heritage, what we came into the world as souls to manifest, to experience, so that we're all here keeping that movement going. And there are tests, and you might say, well, what is that about? And I see it as, are we willing, and do we choose back? So many are called. Then it goes that few are chosen. And then there's another part after that, because few choose back. But consider, are you amongst the few? And it's like, well, how few is it? Like some people want to measure that. Like, am I on some plank here? Or, I'm walking the plank and there's some guy with a dagger behind me, and I look below and it looks like sharks are ready and hungry, and how did I get myself here? And so there has been a sacrifice. And I've said this quite often, and even quite often lately, one crucifixion is enough. And let's consider one sacrifice of the Christ in the flesh, that the Christ, that divine spark, that was referred to as the emanation, a direct emanation. This is my son, that there was in a direct emanation, and it led to a life that was crucified. And that let's consider that, well, that has an order. So if you're following what was said to those who were following, that if you think you're exempt, if you think they're not going to persecute you, you're fooling yourself, that they're going to do in some way what they've done to me. But let's move it into a scale that we're not looking for a crucifixion. That's not the measurement of, do we have a life of Christ, and we don't have one until we're crucified. But that willingness to move through it to what comes next, so that we're in a path that invites us as an invitation to come into the resurrection. And I've been here when John Rogers talked about that. We need to get the Christ off the cross. That there was a part of what his life has become that's no longer on the cross. So to stay right there and focus at that point and say, well, that's what it is, and then flagellate and have it a life that's harsh or in some way all about sacrifice. I don't see that's what is intended. So there's a joy in the Christ. There's an uplifting, there's a celebration, there's a birth, and that we can do that toward one another. So if we manage that in such a way as we move by grace past the sacrifice, that the life of Jesus the Christ allowed us to move to grace. Like we get to pass go or something like that, like go ahead and collect, so that we're not trying to go right into the footsteps, that lead to a crucifixion. That if there's something that's crucified, it's the part I talked about earlier, which would be our judgments, the spirit or the master of doubt, fear, that these are the things that need to be sacrificed. Those of you who've been in the peace awareness trainings, in the grace retreat, you know that part of what we deal with is focusing on what is to be sacrificed. And I can tell you, so you can challenge the course and pass if you're willing to sacrifice the negativity in your life, to put that on the altar. So that's what is finished. Like, it is finished. If we could all say that the negativity is done. There is a place in the Acts and I don't know exactly where to point it to you in chapter and verse, but it's the evil of today is sufficient. So there's no need for more negativity. So then what would the life of Christ be inviting us into? A life of loving and a life of forgiveness, a life of grace, a life of joy, that we love one another, that this anointing causes us to come into the fellowship that sees through the eyes of love, and sees through, I forgive you. And those words were spoken from the cross. Forgive them, Father. And to me that was something that passed on the judgment, as in not pass it on like, here, have the judgment, but passed it into the Spirit. That the judgment was there as a karma, as a law, like if you've crucified the one who was least deserving of this, then in some way all share that condemnation, that mark would be on our forehead or somewhere, that we were part of that crucifixion. Just because we would share in the level of how that works. If you know how karma works, there's a sharing in the humanity level, that we all have some level of responsibility for what's going on with our brothers and sisters. So we are our brothers and sisters' keepers, but that's also, let's help one another to lift, to move out of this. Not as like, I therefore assign myself, if you're going to go, be a fool. And that's something that Jesus also made clear. I can help all but the fools. And what is that? Because we each carry responsibility and freedom of choice. So if we want to be foolish with our choices, like no thanks, that's a choice we have, and we're allowed the luxury of that karma. I think you've heard that before from John Roger. I certainly have. We're all allowed that luxury of our karma, but we're also allowed the luxury of free choice that would be transcendent and say, I forgive myself. Gee, it looks like it's like I go like this. I forgive myself. I forgive all of you. I forgive whatever it is. I forgive whatever's going on the planet, so that I finish the karma with the planet. So if you're still hung up with what people are doing to each other, the injustices, the condemnations, and you're not already forgiving that, then you might want to let that go, because that becomes something that nails you to whatever that judgment is. So wherever there's hatred, then those are seeds that can be sowed, but they're also seeds that can be pulled out, like uprooted in forgiveness. That we release ourselves from all the past actions. Wherever that was coming from, it's not exactly on the paper here, but what we do have, here's how I'm going to just read exactly what it says. To show you how simple and easy this process can be, we're going to begin with a meditation in which we will have a dialogue with Jesus. Like, really? Wow. So, like, if I came here tonight and I tuned in online, I'm going to get to dialogue directly with Jesus. Wow. So take a moment to take out a pen and paper from under your chairs, is that right? And get into a relaxed, comfortable position. Yes, I don't know if the assistants realized that they had that assignment, but they now do. And those of you, wherever you are, if you're watching and listening, there's an opportunity to write, to have a journal of some kind. So we ask you to stay focused and pay attention to what is taking place inwardly. I'm also going to put on something, I believe is it from the packet? What packet is the Star of Bethlehem meditation from? Anointed One, okay. Just checking with our friends and products, and wow, you're in leaner times here. There's not so many products these days, huh? Do we have any Anointed One packets on hand these days? Maybe not. But in any case, they're available. So the Anointed One is another way of referring to the Christ, and also specifically Christ Jesus. So we're going to play. Oh, we do. How about that? How many do you have on hand this evening? 5. Okay. So some of you, I'm sure, would like to make that available to yourself. It's a beautiful packet. Maybe someone could bring it up to me and then I'll refer to it. So you don't have to write things down, but it's just the idea is that there may be in this dialogue with Christ Jesus that you may want to take some note and maybe wish you would have taken that shorthand class when you had the chance, and or something like that. But if by now you've all become expert texters, and you can just thumb it into your device. And I'm joking because I don't know how to do this. It's, that I'm still working on those keyboards. All right, thank you. Yes, bring it up, please. Okay, here's what our packet looks like. It has some, I think these are all CDs, which would be audio recordings, digital version. So we have a Christ interphasing, so that Christ will interphase you. That would be nice. We have a recording called God, Traveler, Christ, and You, and these are selections from various seminars that John Roger has conducted over the years. We also have convergent moments with the Star of Bethlehem meditation. So we have some version of that that's about 5 minutes if you're wondering how long. We have our Song of Love, which is the prayer that we often play at ministers' meetings. The original. So maybe this is the only place if you want to hear when John Roger first spoke those words. And I can tell you it's an amazing recording because it's something on the order of a symphony. That's how I hear it. With beautiful words that are perfectly harmonized. Then we have the Star of Bethlehem meditation, and then we have the Inner Christ, which J.R. speaks of the cosmic Christ, the consciousness that is present in each one of us as the beloved. So there you go. It looks like we're all ready. Do we have a way of taking room and, excuse me if I go dim, but my mom said things about that, but that's all right. I forgive myself, I forgive my mom, about whatever level of illumination I've been carrying in my life. But it'd be nice if we dimmed these lights however we have, if we don't have to just go to dark, something like that. So I'm testing it to see if we have that ability. Aha. Very nice. Thank you. Okay. I think that's a good adjustment right there. Thank you, Larry. So here we go. If you prefer to just listen and then you don't have to have your eyes open, it's like, well, how would I write? It's like, I'll let you work that out. Again, I give you freedom to write or not write. Eyelids open, not open. So we call ourselves forward in the light, specifically the light that is the Christ, and that anointing that comes through the Holy Spirit. It can be seen a number of ways. It's a white light. So there's a light of Christ that you can see is something that's illumined in what is all of the frequencies of the light as it integrates. So it becomes very bright and illuminated. And yet our forms are intact. So it's a light that comes in and integrates with how we breathe. So you can be aware of the light in your breathing. You can be aware that you're enveloped, you're enfolded in this beautiful embrace of the Christ. And you can take that personally. So you could say, well, I'm in the arms of the Christ. I'm held by the Christ. So I can let go. So the strength of the Christ holds me completely, and I release. So even with wherever you are with your body, sitting, standing, lying down, if somehow you're driving, and then please be safe or pull over or something like that, so that you're in a safe place, so you're enfolded in protection that comes through the Christ. That we also do this through the mystical traveler consciousness on all levels. And that we invoke that which is serving our soul, so we release any negativity into this light. And the light penetrates whatever has been hardened through what we've held on in any negative form, particularly around the heart. So we experience any hardness, any harshness, any severity, any pain, any suffering is gently and powerfully illumined by this light. So these energies that have been hard are released. And there is soothing, there is nurturing. What needs to be released is released. And any negative form can go to the negative that is nothing. So it dissolves, it clears, and what comes forth is healing, restoration, even new birth. And what has been impure is pure. What was disturbed is at peace. What was stuck and considered dead is released and free and alive. And you can hear this voice, the voice of the Christ, calling to you personally, speaking to you. And you can look into the eyes of the Christ and into this presence we know as Jesus. And now take a moment to realize you are moving in the most simple way, you see yourself walking with the beloved. In this way, it's a movement, but at this time, you are next to the Christ. So you follow closely and deliberately, aware that you choose freely. You're going to a place that is the sanctuary of the Christ, a place where all the beloved who gather in this name, in this calling, in the beloved of God, so that who are gathered here are in fellowship with loving all. So you see beauty all around. You hear harmony, beautiful sounds. So you can hear voices that harmonize. You can hear sounds that are celestial and sing and move in this sound of the one accord. And you know the simplicity of this movement and this presence. It is a release. It is your heart's joy. It is a friendship. So you're called into the Christ as a friend. You're called into the Christ as one who rises up in your maturity. So as you have lived as a child of the God who is the beloved, you now come into the brotherhood and the sisterhood that is this fellowship of the Christ. And you realize your life as it is, your life in this world, whatever form it has taken, and whatever form it is to take, that you're always in this fellowship, this embrace of the Christ. It works in forgiveness of all. It works in the strength of purpose to do good to one another, to honor, and to also stop whatever againstness has been your way. That you're no longer part of the negative form. And even though this world is a place where the negative form is allowed to test and to manifest what it can in fear and hatred and any form of against us, that this power and the strength that is with you in the Christ is a power to overcome. And if it is not in the ways of this world, you let that go, for your concern is the world that you are to go, that is already prepared, that is the heaven that we talk about, that is at hand. So you're in a heavenly place that is prepared by this consciousness of the Christ. It is done. And whatever words come to you at this time, whatever you're shown in any form, Look upon this as the direction, the purpose, the way your life is to go. And if there's something for you to state, to declare as your truth, that is a living truth, then you can also make that clear and hear that inwardly and hear the response that comes from the Christ through Jesus. And the possibilities of what is opened up through this consciousness of the beloved into the Spirit. All the blessings are fully present. Beirish Beishan. So now we're going to continue for a moment. If there's anything you want to write down about your inner experience, just go right ahead and do that. We're going to hear a version of the Star of Bethlehem meditation from J.R.
Close your eyelids in a relaxed way. And allow yourself to relax into that sacred place within you. It's a difficult place to find, but if you just focus gently on your breathing, there's a better chance of finding it. And now inside of yourself, you individually call yourself forward into the light of the Christ. Keeping your physical eyelids closed, inwardly say to yourself, I open my spiritual eyes. You may see nothing. It may be bright. It may be dark. There is no need to judge, so just relax and observe whatever is going on. Just be open and loving inwardly. Now inwardly, you find yourself looking upwards to the sky that is within you. It is the spiritual sky. In the sky, you see a star. If you see lots of stars, just choose the one that gets your attention. It might be the brightest one. There is an inner joy and knowingness that starts to appear inside of you as you look at it. That is the star of revelation. It's also known as the Star of Bethlehem. It is the star you go through to find the Christ. So focus on that bright star, that point of light, and begin to move towards it. Gradually, gently, and surely, you find yourself getting closer to it. Some get there real fast, others seem to be in slow motion. they're all fine. As you get closer and closer, you start to experience its purity. Open your heart and allow its light to enfold you. Allow yourself to surrender to the unconditional loving that is so present. Experience yourself going through the star and into the Christ. There is no ending to this experience. There is nowhere to go. Maintaining the full experience in a calm, peaceful, gentle way, open your eyelids and become aware of your physical location and that you're still in the star of the Christ. Just keep the peace and calmness with you. Berush Beshem.
If you'd like to bring the lights up, that would be fine. Roger, do you have the access to the Anointed One and what you have over there? And do you have also Jar's the prayer, Song of Love? Yeah, okay. So that'll be a bonus if you stay around for 11 and a half hours until I'm done sharing. Something like that. Okay. We are going to open it up so that if you have something that you have in some way that you would like to share, and sometimes that comes in a form of a kind of a quest that we are aware of, something we're reaching for, or something that appears to be holding us from going forward and moving with the invitation. So let's consider there's an invitation, an introduction with an invitation, a call into the Christ that's been issued here. Again, but have you ever been with someone that they represent to you, that when they get up and go, that it's your time to get up and go? That's the relationship that you have. Certainly, I'm sure, however we were raised, that we probably had people around us that were like that. That when they decided when it was time to go. And it wasn't always necessarily on our terms, but in some ways that often became like we would just get up, because if they were moving, then we would be moving with them. And that's maybe one of the reasons why they often call the followers of Christ sheep. And then the one who is in that position, the shepherd. But then we consider, well, where are you leading us? See, there's the real question here. Where are we being led in the Christ? And in this movement, we consider that we have a consciousness that extends through the Christ into this world, so that it's working directly through the Christ, that we call the traveler. And that's then a direct extension So we're moving in a direct line to God. So if you didn't know that about this movement, or you don't have that consciously, that's information for you to check out. That's what we're representing here, is a movement, a consciousness that has the authority sent by God to lift us up here in this world and in all the worlds to come, so that we have a direct opportunity to come into our full consciousness of the soul, and that's a way of knowing who we are with God. Any questions, any sharing that anybody would like to have? If you raise your hand, then I'll know that's your indication you're ready, or at least willing. And yes, right there in the back. I appreciate hearing your name as well.
My name is Alana, and do you want me to stand up?
You don't need to. I'm going to have a seat, so if you'd like to have a seat, because we're not, for whatever reason, the way this online thing works, we don't show your likeness or something like that.
Emanation, or what was the word that you used earlier?
Sharing?
No, emanation, I think it was.
Oh, emanation. Intention, your intention, that was part of your purpose. Depends on how early you want to go.
Go back to the beginning. No. I am here. This is my second time. I'm here on a scholarship, and I want to thank. I didn't get a chance last year to voice my gratitude and appreciation. I guess my quest, and has been ever since, early on, inception or conception, whatever you want to call it, is to be with the divine light, and trying to find my place here on the planet Earth, trying to maintain and stabilize the best I can do, carrying forth the light and trying to find out how to share it and how to not fit it in, but walk with it and work with it, but on a much grander scale. I've been limited, like a lot of people have been, by a lot of physical complications. And my intention for being here, and I haven't written to the mystical traveler because I believe that traveler person was myself. I'm the one who's been carrying myself through most of my journeys through guidance of a higher soul, and I feel I've done pretty good, but I feel held back, and I'm been really graveling with how to blast off, how to get this going a little bit faster, and how that I can't bring anybody with me, that this is just a part of my journey that...
Well, I'm ready to respond.
Okay,
So,
please.
What I see with you is common and ordinary, and with all of us, and that we're all working through our limitations. That goes with being human. And yet, if we were looking at it, let's say compared to the mineral kingdom, so that there are various relationships and orders. What is it? Family, order, phylum, things like that have been studied scientifically about classifying and putting us into the great cosmic scheme. That we have a high order in the human consciousness, that we have, whatever you want to call it, faculties, abilities, opportunities to work at a much grander, greater level than, I'll go back to the mineral kingdom. And I know there are some people maybe in the room that would say, well, I think human beings are on a lower scale than the mineral kingdom. And I think at times that we kind of demonstrate the ability to like go low when we could do otherwise. You know, that we do have a facility, a range of consciousness, you know, like on the continuum, so that we're not disconnected or separated from any aspect of the creation, so that we're all rocks, if you will. And you know, that's something St. Francis, amongst many, you know, who's reflected, helped us to understand that we have a, was it brother, sun, sister, moon? You know, we have a relationship to these various bodies and forms. Yet, you know, the opportunity that's in the human condition is to go very high, that it's been likened as a springboard. I know that's a term John Roger has used, that we're in this world in a springboard. We're in an opportunity to go high if we set ourselves up with that intention. So it's the intention to go high. And I heard that in your words, but I also heard your struggle, you know, your resistance. At times that can become something that we might look at and say, oh, you're fighting, or you're at war. But again, what I would say, that all of us have had our fights, all of us have had our battles, our wars, our skirmishes, whatever the scale is. So that I don't think there's anybody here who could say, oh, I've never done anything like that. I've never resisted. I've never fought. I've never struck against brother, sun, or sister, moon. And yet, some part of our existence would probably say, oh yeah? You know, we have records here. And just because you forgot doesn't mean these records don't carry forward. The beauty in that is as we come into this consciousness of our divine nature and take up that order, how I relate to it is it's like all at once becoming as small as I can, and that might be more like humble as I can be, to be the least amongst you, and then to be also willing to step into the greatest, to do that all at once, so that if you said today your card is, if we were doing tarot cards or something, or you know these kinds of systems that sort of assign us like, oh, you have that characteristic or that form that you're working out, and that we need to fulfill whatever that assignment is. That we have an opportunity to fulfill our divine assignment, to come into the realization of our oneness with God, and do it while we're still in the body. Which, on the order of the mind, I would say probably says, are you kidding? You know, there would be some level of it that would question and doubt, and or find fear or nonsense about that, because we would really be going, you know, whatever the Star Trek opening is, you know, about the Enterprise, where it's going, you know, to places that have been unexplored, or maybe they've only been a thought, but we're going to explore with our highest nature, our highest destiny, and to do what we can while we're here. And so the simplicity of what that becomes is, it's not like you are no longer carrying a vote because you've given it over to God or someone who's acting as an intercessory or something like that, you know, that has your ticket and only they have the authority to punch in it. If you don't satisfy the toll keeper, then you don't get to go. So your vote is carried, it's a full vote, but also that it would come in as to what degree are you willing to let go, to what degree are you willing to sacrifice and give up, and to that degree then you're given unto that you become. And it's one of the great mysteries is, well, how does it work like that we are to receive in full and to give in full. Like those appear to be at opposite ends of the continuum, but they're not. They're really something we do all at once. It's like, how do you relate to your limitations is the issue. And if you relate in love, that you love your limitations, the ones that you were born with that could be spelled out in some form of DNA code or, whatever that is that articulates in very fine detail the specifics of your creation. And that's been shown to us over and over, that there's a uniqueness in the creation. So there's no repetition, which is kind of amazing, that if we think of numbers, like, is there a finite number? And it's like, well, you can just keep, which number would you like to add? 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can get on to another basis for a number. We think, 10's it. It's like, oh no, you could do a whole nother basis, and then there would be numbers if those of you who follow that numerology or something on that order, that these things are working in cycles. So I love something I remember hearing from John Roger, that if you want to understand, and I'm kind of pointing to the good book here, sometimes referred to the Bible, but there are those that say, well, the Bible is actually the first 5 books and that's it. After that, it's more like commentaries or something else, etc. But in here, that the summation, you don't need to read it all if you can understand that we're to love one another and we're to love God. That's the commandment. And that was spoken of as Jesus. Like, what is the greatest commandment? Well, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all thy body, all thy mind, and all thy spirit. And well, that was already spoken long before you, Jesus. And I issue you a new commandment, and that's to love one another. And to come into that fellowship, that you can't say you love God and then you hate your brother, Cain. That doesn't work. So as soon as we violate some part of the creation, we're in violation with our God. So if you can come into that and understand that the way that translates in your life, it's called the first law of Spirit, that you come into an acceptance and that's an allowance for your life such as it is. That you embrace it, that you vote for yourself. And I like to put in those terms that everybody has a vote. Do you honor your life? Do you love your life? Or do you have some issue where you want to be in separation? Well, I don't like this part of my life. Or I don't like that I can't have somebody join me on my journey in a particular way, so they have a first-class seat next to me. Why do they have to sit and coach? It's like, well, life is like that. That's how their life has flowed. They're in coach, but if it really doesn't matter that we're on the plane, it really matters where is the plane going and what's going to happen to us once we arrive. So I look at this world as more like a vehicle that we realize our oneness with God. And if we're in some way resisting, fighting, condemning the vehicle, it's more like, you haven't worked out your relationship with the vehicle. When you've done that, then you'll work out your relationship with who you are. And it's often like, but these shoes are too tight. How can I love you, Lord God, if my shoes are tight? Because you can get beyond that you can transcend that. This is something I looked ahead at what we're going to be doing during the weekend. And we're going to be doing some of this work where we find out what transcends the limitations of this level, the negativity of this level. And these are often the things that interfere with our relationship with our divine anointed nature. that's already fully present. So maybe that got around to whatever you were talking about, and maybe it didn't. But I appreciate your sharing, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy, and I've been blessed with participation in MSAA for almost 20 years, and this is only my second time I've chosen to share because every time I get all my answers through all of you. So thank you for 20 years of helping me get answers. So what's coming up for me is related to the concept of fun and spirituality. My service and my work is in the world of business and financial services, which isn't always fun right now. But we're fascinated with a concept called gamification, of how do you take mundane things or things people don't want to do and make them fun. And what kind of came up for me in this exercise was that back when my daughter was 2, my husband came up with our motto, which became, make it fun and get it done. And we had so much fun as a family, you know, finally getting her into bed and all that kind of stuff. And so I just, I'm searching for something. There's sort of the technical operational ways of doing that, but there just feels like there's a very spiritual side to this. So whatever you have, I'd love to hear.
Well,
and it'd be fun.
Yes. I've been with John Roger on numerous occasions when he said, if it's not going to be fun, I'm not going to be doing it. Anybody heard John Rogers say something like that? Okay. And I can tell you from personal experience of being in close proximity with him that he made good numerous times on that he would withdraw his participation and begin participating in something else that was more fun. And that wasn't always convenient. I can tell you that, or expected, or that others were relating to John Rogers' choice as fun. But I saw the importance of that intention. And I think one of the things that has been sold, and I think it is sold as a test, is that there's something that's serious and somber about spirituality. So if you make it sacred, that means you have to sit still. You can't laugh, when it's sacred. And we've probably been in those moments when you couldn't help but laugh, and even if with whatever you're telling yourself, like, this is not a time to be laughing. It's not a time to be laughing, and whatever you tried to do to stop it didn't work. And that to me is one of the signs of the Spirit, is it's an irrepressible joy, and that if we can get with that, and I love your exampleship and your husband's leadership, like, make it fun and get it done, that if we all understood that that's the assignment while we're in this world, it's like, really? I mean, make it fun and get it done? If you understood that, if we all understood that, like, we could do that. We could make it fun and get it done. So work out the economy and work out all the issues that are in the world. And a big giant key would be if we made it more fun in how we related to one another and how we just related to what we had to do. So if there's a mess to clean up, well, how could we make this fun? Let's find it. What's the fun way first? And perhaps go there first. Like, well, how would we do this in fun? So I love what you're saying, and that one of the ways I hear the teachings of the Christ tell us that those who come like children, only those who come as children would come. And my child in here, and how I relate to children is they're fun-loving. They want to play. So when I was a child, I would go seek somebody to play with. Like, can Tommy come out and play? That was my question. Like, it's time to play. Can Tommy come out and play? And like, well, when did I drop that agenda? I don't know. Or why did I drop that agenda? I don't know. But I have that understanding that when we're in the Christ and in what we're really here to do together, it has a funness. It doesn't mean that we are irresponsible. And I think sometimes people think that there's an irresponsibility in making light or having fun. But to me, it's like if we can get it done, so if we're doing brain surgery and it's fun, why not? And I've heard that some of the best surgeons are, people that tell jokes and what in the operating room. It's like we're not in a rush. Like, did you hear the one about? But like, I don't know if I want you laughing while you're like, if you can't hold your hand steady. But I also look at that joy releases us often. That we work at the highest level of performance when we're relaxed. And I know I've heard JR refer to laughing as inner jogging. That it's a kind of an exercise that gets our heart in the right condition. God bless you, and maybe the third sharing won't be so long before it comes around.
I'll make it fun.
Okay. Go over here, yeah.
Hi, John. My name is John. My intention for the weekend is to keep remembering I am divine. This afternoon we had some trouble with the room reservations at the hotel. A lot of disagreements came up, and some assurances that we thought were in place were not kept. So we finally resolved it with the hotel. We transferred our reservation to the Holiday Inn. And I want to ask for a clearing on any negative energy residue that's still around that circumstance. And any other comments? Thanks.
Well, was it fun? It is now. And here's something a lot of you have heard before in this movement, that if it's going to be fun later, it can be fun now. So if you can laugh about it later, and we already had a later. And there are people called comedians that make their business off of this. Often, what appears as a very serious, human situation, personal or from others, is often used in a different way of relating to it, such that we're laughing at the very same thing that someone else was not laughing, having a very difficult, contradictory kind of moment. So there's that opportunity, and I think it's the kind of thing that if we understand, even in the moment, that somehow this isn't the way my heart would conduct these proceedings. That's a ridiculous thing to think. Like, in that moment when I'm upset and disturbed, I'm not thinking, this is not the way my heart would conduct these proceedings. But there's also an awareness, and I think you all know what I'm talking about, that when you're in a hard place, when you're in a resisting, disagreeing place, that there is a part of us saying, hello, are you sure you want to keep going this way? This is not the way we want to go. And to find ways where we go to the fun or go to a neutral corner of some kind. Maybe that's called count to 10. I'm going to count to 10. That's when the referee said, "You're out." Right? That's because I knocked you out. with my right cross. That these are the moments of intervention, intercessory work, so that you can understand that if it comes in, that it's often that you're moving yourself in resolution. And I've been through those circumstances, and some of them have been rough and raw and not the kind of thing where I want to stand up and say, okay, Lord, can we use this as the exampleship of my existence? It's more like, can we somehow erase that, clear that, so that's not part of what is considered for my entry into the kingdom. Just have that wisdom that we're human, and then convert it and conduct it now, so that there's a blessing. So there's a blessing present, and that blessing can include, you're at the Holiday Inn. Hooray. And they can say, good, we'd love to have your guest, and because you stay at the Holiday Inn, you're a very smart guy. At least that's how I've been seeing them promote themselves. It's in the tone. So that as soon as we return, as soon as we come back into that consciousness that relates in the love of the brotherhood, the love of our fellowship, that there are brothers and sisters in Christ who are behind desks and then don't relate in the way that you were expecting or wanting, and to keep that going, so that even if you lost track of that, like I forgive myself for forgetting that my interaction here was divine, and that's a real important forgiveness, that somehow we lost track and the circumstances come along and they show us where we're weak, where we lose track of the divinity. I was looking at something on the order of what you're talking about today, and I realized, when Jesus was talking to Pontius Pilate, and I'm just referring to the guy that was assigned the role representing Rome and Romans' ways and means, and then interacting with the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin and Caiaphas, and what they wanted to have done, and he was kind of caught in the middle, and his Pontius Pilate's wife is saying, I don't think you want to mess with this guy. He's got magical powers, and I don't know. And so he had superstition coming in, and Jesus' response, more or less, was a non-response. Like, it's up for you to decide. Well, won't you give me some way I can wash my hands of this? I don't want to be part of this, so give me an out, so I can do something and there are times where I just see that's the wisdom. The wisdom is in, if you can't say something nice, don't say something at all. Oh yeah, my grandma said that. But I thought she was nonsense. It's like, sometimes you just have to tell people off and put them in their place and call them names. And there's something about that hang on. You can still speak your truth, but if you can't find a way to do it according to what is the love of the brother, it's like that you hold your tongue. And that's scriptural, that we get in far more trouble by what our tongue does, that convicts us because it speaks in some way that we then condemn ourselves by what we've said. Judge not, lest you be judged. So that, that often I think the wisdom is in, I can't right now find a positive way to express, so I'm holding on my expression. That's the discretion, that's the discernment that realizes I haven't worked out quite how to love you, so if I make a move right now, it would be punch you in the nose. So right now I'm not moving. Even though you've asked me, how many times do I have to ask you? And then somewhere there's a level of, I can't even answer that, because the way I would answer it, I would punch you in the nose. So it's like I'm holding, and maybe in some way someone else is reacting to that, which is their freedom of choice. So that it doesn't mean that when you're in your divinity and you're holding in a neutral place, like I'm not finding a way to respond lovingly or purely or kindly, that doesn't mean they're going to respond in kind. Maybe they're going to respond in trying to beat the hell out of you because you won't answer the question. And it's like my answer is a response I can't give, like I don't have that coin in my purse, which is a reference to something that Jesus said when he was called upon to bring down the fire like Elijah brought down on the priests of Baal. And it's like, well, I'm not doing that. And Simon the Zealot or somebody in that line wanted him to get the Romans out. Let's storm the gates and let's use your powers to kick out the Romans and do the kingdom that you're here to do. You're the Messiah. Come, let's set up. It's like, I'm not here for that. My kingdom's not on that mount over there. It's in another place. A place that's being prepared. So maybe what we're understanding here is we're human and we have these moments. And I'm sure there were others that say, well, let me tell you about mine today. Where I lost it. And I didn't even make it to the Holiday Inn. Holiday Inn would be great. My car's a wreck, and that's literal. And sometimes it's like that. That these are, if your karma is instant, I'd say that's God's favors upon you. The fools think, oh, I got away with it. No, it's just so loaded up, it'll be here later. The karma that's coming around now has been there for a while. And the karma that you just created, it'll come around. So you didn't get away with anything. This is something that takes a strong devotion and dedication to live in this, to walk in this. It takes, you just think about what would it be like, seeing through the eyes of Christ Jesus, to walk into the trial and to keep walking in, and with all the appearances, like, did he know what a crucifixion was? Did he know what was coming to him? Did he know what the Sanhedrin had in mind? I'm sure he saw it, and I'm sure that's what he was down on his knees in the Garden of Gethsemane trying to, could we work out a different plan here? This is kind of harsh, isn't it? Is this really necessary? And that's the way I look at it. That's why I said earlier that one crucifixion's enough. One who did this, and it was done for all. It was done in that way that the innocence allowed it to be something that would cover all the transgressions. Now, maybe that just sounds like an amazing fictional account, or maybe in some level we all get that, okay, so whatever you did today is a transgression against your brother, or one of the least of them in the kingdom. The Christ is saying, that's okay, I forgive you, John. But get up and sin no more. See, that's part of what goes on in this life of the Christ. Get up, rise up in what that is, and so that in some way you might have some understanding of, I need to go clean that up. There's a level of this that's mine, whatever that is. And often that's what stays with us. That's why I won't let go. Why am I carrying this? It's because in some way you haven't blessed it. So what would it be? Well, maybe it is 70 times 70. What are you saying? I have to write after school on the chalkboard, I forgive myself for, and how many is that? 4,700 times? Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Until it's done. But the blessing of the Christ it's immediate. It covers all the transgression. There's nothing that's not forgiven. Christ is forgiveness. So if we bring it in, then it's done, and then we can go free. So it's like, well, then let the blessing come. How would that work? Well, it can work inside you. You know, that's one of the things to do with your sanctuary. You know, that earlier I mentioned it as a sanctuary of Christ. Like, bring these things in so all are blessed. And then it's like, well, if I stole from somebody 40 years ago, I mean, I don't even know where they are. And then, well, what if they're no longer on the planet? Like, how do I work that out? It's like, well, maybe you're generous with somebody else. You know, that you give them what they don't deserve in your generosity. And that's part of what you're doing. You're seeding the balancing and the healing in the world. That we take care of one another, that we do that. Anything else? Okay. Right over here, I'm sorry I don't know your name, but you'll tell us. How about that?
Hi, John. My name is Kate. And as I was listening to this last sharing, it just kind of encouraged me to stand up, because I was just have so much gratitude for this past week. We had services in Minneapolis last week, which is where I'm from. And we had a wonderful workshop on Sunday night about the divine essence, which kind of created a great opener to coming to Kalamazoo. And what has really been helpful to me is my intention to come here and to come to other events like this, because of just how much I receive. And also, I think there's obviously an exchange of giving and receiving that happens. But for me, there was a great opening inside of me after the service I had and the workshop that I attended. Something that was just kind of stuck and upset in there that finally kind of got broken apart and some space opened up. And it really, in the week that I just went through, it just felt so much lighter and so much better. And now I think that, you know, sometimes that combination of forgiveness, for sure, and then constantly thinking about forgiving myself, but also just getting back up every day and starting it with that renewed sense of, you know, that's in the past, and I can move forward completely forgiven, trying my best to, you know, really live in my loving. And I just, I found in particular with one person in my life right now that I have to work with a lot, and I was kind of, it's been difficult. That breaking up and that openness really made a big difference in my interactions this week, so yay for that.
Thank you for sharing. We'll go right next door to you, kind of there. So.
Thank you. Hi, John. I'm Judy. And I was just reminded as you were sharing about finding the joy, and I'd like to bring forward the vision that came to me was, next to me here is my dear friend who went to kindergarten with me. And we recently had our 50-year high school reunion. And we reunited and I had some memories. And I remember when, as a young child, at my grandparents running next door to say, "Linda, can you come out and play?" and through the years, you know, we've seen each other once in a while. But at the reunion, it was amazing for us. There was 12 of us women that got together, and we shared what's happened to us in the last 50 years. And it was just phenomenal to listen to one another. And it just brought to me to a vision, as you were talking, of how amazing it is to look back and go, okay, I've made it through these 50 years. I had an intention to get educated and to be of service in some way. And now I got to reflect with some of those people that, we shuffled through the hallways together, shoulder to shoulder. And many of us showed up again. We showed up at this 50-year time and laughed and recalled. And I still see that place of our youth. I see that place of me. And I think about, the time that I had prepared for myself to get here now. And it's amazing to me, and it was such a celebration of joy to say, here we are, and look what we've done, and we've shown up again to celebrate that occasion. And there's a lightness to me about that, and I saw that that's what I wanted. My intention for this weekend is to bring in that lightness, and even as I say it, to know that the light is that place that brings me joy, but that through all the bumps and the bruising and the getting up again and being married again for the fourth time. And the steps that we are going through is, it feels like I'm picking up a new strength with that vision, and I'm grateful to be here that I can stand with the Christ of me and ask that light come more purely and with greater strength in my interaction and my joy with who I'm next to. So.
Okay. God bless you. So I'm going into let's call it a wrapping up mode here. So, and what time is it? What does it say? 9:09. 9:09. Okay. That's in a way, in terms of what the time we had allowed, it's a little on the earlier than expected, but that's okay. Because if we go to the fun, we can get it done. So that's where I am. We're having fun, and it isn't even yet, and we're still having fun. There's a part of my assignment with you tonight in the invitation to the Christ Within that has to do with accessing Christ. And I read the words and I thought, I've got that, and so I'm going to share my version that's present with you. And it works in the way of having the intention and the purpose, however you've been relating to it tonight. And some of you have awareness of what has led you here, let's say, from long ago. So 50 years beyond, and even if it's something that we carry in with the awareness, like my whole existence, that I have some consciousness that lets me know this is not my first lifetime, this is not the first time that in some way I'm working this out. And so the accessing has to do with recognizing what it is that fulfills you in your life, and what fulfills you the most, what is the most important, the most essential. It does include things like our next breath and this breath, and to understand there's something that we could call the holy breath, so that we're breathing with the Christ, and that it's personal, so that the Christ is here with us. And so I include those of you who are with us, however you are, whenever that is, that it's very personal, it's very direct. It becomes something so I can see you, and I can see who and what this anointing of God, this full power of God, like what does it do? What does it render to us and from us? And we've said it earlier, it renders something that we could bring together in loving. So we could say, well, we know it's loving, and we know it's this quality we call forgiving, where we let it go, we give it up. So we give up what is less than loving, that we have that willingness to do. And that may appear at times, well, why do I have to be the first one to love? Or why do I have to take the lead? There's a book from John Roger, I think it's called Momentum, Letting Love Lead. Do I have that correct? Okay, thank you. So it's a wonderful book with Paul Kay, the president of this church, as well as John Roger. They put together a book. And in there is something, you know, if I give this to you and you haven't read the book, I'd say, well, this is what you're going to get out of it. And maybe what you're going to get out of what we're all doing here tonight is to be able to say to anything and everything, I love this. And to say it with the full power of who you are. And so if you're kind of stuck in that moment, like I said it, but I didn't quite mean it, or I'm not quite willing to back it up, I can say it with gritted teeth, but not necessarily would I embrace you, or would I want to have anything to do with you, or it, whatever it might be. You know, that we come into that willingness to access it and take the leadership, so that when that question came in earlier from John Roger, who's the next one to know themselves as the Christ? Not a partial Christ or Christ in training, you know, a in-service Christ, trainee, but to really step into it in the full power of what it is and the full responsibility of it. That is the next move, that's the move. That's what's at hand here. So I encourage you to consider that you are a walking, breathing Christ, in the full power of what that is, and perhaps the only thing that's missing is your willingness to admit that to yourself, to acknowledge it, that I am the Christ, to say that, and to say, I am the light, I am the truth, I am the way. And maybe that's a point of laughter, you know, where the people are like, you're the light? You know, excuse me, but have you noticed what your life has been? And you're saying you're the light? You know, but that the power of this forgiveness and the power of this love can change a life. You know, if it can really do something like call forth Lazarus, you know, in a view of a turning point that was dead. I was sharing earlier today, I'm going to share a bit right now, that I was at, I was going to do this, and here's the moment. So Lee, I just want you to know, see, I'm aware of you, and there are people that miss you and go, where's Lee? So, yeah, that's right. She went to Los Angeles, so when she came on the plane from London that landed in Chicago, then she went on a plane to Los Angeles, and then I went on a plane that went to Kalamazoo. But Lee met Wayne Dyer in the elevator. So some of you know author Wayne Dyer, and in London, and then so they had this encounter that led to Lee and me being invited to his talk in London, and then things, you know, kept going, you know, in this way. And then at his talk, he introduced a woman who you'd say he had had a near-death experience. We're talking, the doctors were telling her husband and mother, we've done everything we can, her systems are shutting down, it's imminent, you know, get ready. And she had all the effects of cancer, like stage 5 and whatever's after stage 5, you know, that kind of thing. And so she was not in her body, but she was aware of what was being said. She was aware of what was going on and being said in the hospital, so she was aware of things going on down the hall. Other people's situations, she started becoming aware of people who were no longer in the world, who had died, passed over. So all at once at the same time. Then she was talking to beings, and eventually what they related to her was, well, you have this choice, and the choice would be you could continue. And it's like, well, how would I continue? It's like, don't worry, we'll work that out. And she was very aware of like the beauty, the glory, what we hear, is in the spirit. What we talk about is in the spirit. And I'm not saying you don't know what I'm talking about, because I consider that this is this movement that we do it while we're in the body. So we say, let's go see what is in the spirit while we're in the body, so we know what it is while we're in the body, and then we can make some adjustments without having to go to near death or something like that. She was very aware that her fear in her life had caused the cancer. And she was like, I see it. It's very clear. And because I withdrew, because I lived, in fear, because I withdrew, because I wouldn't live fully when I do my life fully. So she came back. She had a complete, whatever you want to call it, miracle, reversal. What's the medical term when? Remission. Thank you. A remission is like, can you call it? No, there are no miracles in medicine, but remission. That's just, we don't know how to explain it. That's another way that I think they would say it. But in any case, so then Wayne Dyer basically said, you have to tell the story. And it's like, well, I'm not an author. It's like, you have to, I'll make it happen. I will help it. And there she was talking at the talk. So here I'm talking about that so that it relates, that in some way, it's like, are you making this up? I'm not making this up. So it was in flesh and blood. And, that it's like, well, what does this have to do with us? It's like, well, somehow what I'm telling you is the kingdom is at hand. The life of Christ is at hand. It's with us. It's preparing a place, has prepared a place, so that we don't have to wait, for, the other side, or to pass from this world, that we can step into it while we're here. Beirish Beishan. And so now I'm going to do the bonus for your willingness to stay with me for 11 and a half hours of sharing. That was condensed miraculously, so it's only 9:20. And then I know you can adjust the time zone. So we'll listen to 1971. I think it was probably done at whatever the conference was that year. That's my vague recollection here. And as Rogers pointed out, I think this is the only place you hear this, is on this recording in the Anointed packet.
Let's just bring our hearts together. We quiet ourselves. We sit unadorned before our Father, the Creator of us all. We very quietly petition to the God of our hearts. We say, Father, you know the agonies we've gone through. Turn them into our victories. Hear our prayer, Father. Hear this petition that we can once again lift up to your consciousness and realize the divineness of each person we see. And yet we say, Father, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Father, Mother God, we ask not in selfishness, but always keeping in mind the divine will, that we be granted access through Spirit to you. Grant unto us your mercy. Ah, Father, hear us in our loving consciousness. Grant us the closeness to you, that we may once again dwell in the garden of light. Hear this, our song of love, Father. We're anxious to return to that consciousness of you. We are working to be found worthy. Please listen this time as we bypass all of our own inadequacies and reach into the divine that is our heritage. To heaven at last, with loving care, guide thou us home. Amen, amen, amen.
So we have just a few announcements and then we'll get you out of here. Tonight was the introduction to the Christ Within. Tomorrow and Sunday is the invitation to the Christ Within. And I know many of you are signed up for that workshop. If you are not and you would like to find out more about it, it is open to Discourse subscribers. If you are not currently a Discourse subscriber, we can help you out with that. We have a packet for new folks right over at the products table, and we have a whole lot of other really good stuff over there too. So I would encourage you to, if it shows up inside of you, to check it out, to do that. And we'll have somebody out at the registration table to help you with that too. If you're new to MSIA and PTS, the websites are pretty easy. It's pts.org or msia.org. And of course, I'll write those up in a minute too so that they're there. And as aforementioned, lots of study materials over at the product desk. I think that's it, except if you have any questions or any concerns or anything at all. Oh, and if you didn't register tonight, see somebody at the registration desk on that. But if you have any other questions or concerns, there's a handful of us, or handful and a half, with these little orange name tags, and we'll be glad to help you out or find somebody who can. So have a great night. I believe that registration starts at 9 in the morning and the workshop starts at 10. So Sunday we're starting at 10. Till what time? I think I read 4:30. 4:30. 4:30 to 5-ish. So I think that's a wrap. Have a good night. See you tomorrow if I do.
Down by the rock cliffs children play, filled with the joy in the ocean spray. And as the breeze awakens the dawn, I will leave in this happy song. Oh Lord, fill me again. I'll be the flute if you'll be the wind. I'll fly, but I'll return, and I'll tell you all I have learned. All I have learned. Over in the valley where the people go,